My name is Professor Gary Farney. I'm here for our webinar about study abroad programming that's being offered by Rutgers Newark's History Department. Today we're going to talk about two different programs, the Archaeological Field School to Italy and Brian Murphy's Oxford trip for the spring of 2022, the Archaeological Field Schools for summer 2022. And we're going to have more of these, especially as we get closer to both programs. So welcome. Thanks for coming. If you have any questions, make sure you contact either of us about our programs. I'll go ahead and start talking about the Archaeological Field School now. Let me see, I'm going to share my screen. I've got a presentation for you to look at, so you don't just have to stare at us. So everybody can see that, I presume. So Rutgers University has been operating an archaeological field school now that I've been the director of really since 2012. We're planning on offering it again, COVID willing, of course. And you can see our proposed dates are July 10 to August 14. We accept both undergraduate and graduate students to the program. And undergraduate students earn 6 credits, as you can see here on the slide. And New Brunswick students can use them a couple different ways. They're straight up just credits, but also SEBS, if you're a member of a SEBS department, will accept your credits toward their humanities requirement. Otherwise, you can apply credits toward majors and minors in history, classics, or anthropology. At Newark, 3 of the credits can be used toward the history/literature core requirement, and the other 3 can be used towards the arts media core requirement. Otherwise, the credits can be applied to your majors or minors in history, ancient and medieval civilizations, anthropology, and history. And I'm happy to answer any questions about how that's supposed to work. Just some basics about how the field school works. I'm the director of the field school itself, but it represents a much larger archaeological project. We usually have about 12 staff members who are at the site at any one time during our field work, including people from, of course, Rutgers, but also other universities you can see from around Europe and North America. We have members who are at Brown, Oxford, Edinburgh, Toronto, Tennessee, and a few other places. We generally have about 20 students. This year, we're hoping to be a little bit more ambitious and have about 25. And altogether, that means we'll have around 35 people, we hope, at any one time. Students and some staff live in a local hotel called the Agriturismo Lake Line, and I'll show you some images of that in just a bit. We work during the weekdays, but on weekends, students are free to travel around central Italy, and we provide you with transportation to go to Rome. So on the weekend, you can either stay in Rome or you can go on to places like Florence if you'd like to see other parts of Italy, during the program. Right now, looks pretty certain that COVID vaccinations are going to be required for study of any kind in Europe, including Italy. So that's kind of a must. And you can see our website for more information and how to apply. Just to give you a sense about where we're located in Italy, you can see a map here, a topographical map of Italy with kind of the area around Rome highlighted. And the site where we work is, you can see on the star there, not so far from the Tiber River, just upriver from Rome itself. The landscape is very pretty, very nice. It's sort of rolling hills with little towns on them going down to the river. And our site of Vacone is certainly no different. It's just a lovely little Italian hill town. And here's kind of the layout of everything in the local area. The village of Vacone, you can see, is up on the hillside. Our actual villa site is down the hill just a bit. So that's where we work primarily, is at the villa, but we also work in the village of Vacone on materials that we have brought up there. And you can see where people live at the Agriturismo Lake Line, that's just around the hillside there, about a mile away from the site, to give you some sense of scale here. Vacone itself is just a pretty little town. It's very small, has great views everywhere, as you can kind of see from these shots. It's a very small town. It has about 200 people who live in it and only really about 75 year round. So we substantially increase the population, while we're there. Just so you can get a sense of what academically to expect and, what we found at the Vacone site. So we're excavating a Roman villa. And the villa, so far as we can tell, has two phases. One that's what we loosely would call the Republican villa from about 150 BC to 1 CE, and then a second phase from about 1 to 230 CE, with some repairs that seem to take place around 200. It has extensive amounts of mosaic and painted wall plaster that we find both in situ and in fragments. And it's one of the largest known olive oil producing villas that's been found in central Italy. So it's really big. It was very big into olive oil production, and it later produced wine. After the site is abandoned, there is some occupation that happens on it. And in fact, we've discovered about 11 burials on the site, mostly from the Lombard period of Italy. You can see the dates there from like the 6th century to the 8th century. Here's the villa site from a Google Earth map. You can see what we've excavated more or less so far. Some of it's covered up, of course, because we don't leave it completely exposed. Our nearby neighbor is, you can see marked on the map there, Solo per Due, a cute little Italian restaurant. That's our neighbor there, and is very cooperative and nice to us. While you're on the site, we teach you everything you need to know about how to excavate and record in a scientific manner. We teach you everything from, how we dig down to, exactly how we record things that are brought up, and really lots of different, you have lots of different experiences while you're there. In addition to straight up digging things, we also train people in the conservation of especially our mosaic that we uncover, because we've found extensive amounts of mosaic floors, and once they're uncovered, they need conserved right away. And so we have students and staff who work on doing that alongside excavations that go on. Just a little about the site itself. I'm not going to go into any detail, just to give you some sense about the archaeology that's there. Here's an orthographic map of the site from a couple of years ago. You can kind of get a sense of, how big it is and the kinds of rooms we found. I'm going to highlight this room right here, just so you can, have a sampling of what we found. This room, you can see here, has two separate parts with two different kinds of mosaics in it. And there was one mosaic sort of separating the two, which is kind of interesting. It implies, as well as an indentation in the wall, that the rooms were somehow separated from one another. That mosaic in the middle, you can kind of see a blow up there. It's just a nice little, geometric shape that's sort of separating the two areas. Here's the same room from the other angle. You can see the middle mosaic there. And another feature of the site is that we have some in situ wall plaster. You can see this wall plaster that's still there. And it's possible that to recover some of the decoration from the wall plaster that we found. And here's some images of it to give you an example of what it looks like. One of the more interesting things about this room is that we found two objects that we associate with women, including this makeup application stick here to the left, and a little jewelry box handle. So it's kind of interesting. We've dug out the space. It seems to be some kind of domestic space, maybe somewhere where people lived and slept, but it also, we can pin some kind of identity to the person who may have occupied it. And it seems like it was probably a woman. As I mentioned, we found lots of things from the later period of the site, including many graves, and we have an on-site osteologist who helps us evaluate and take the skeletons up as we find them. And we've done lots of testing on them, and you can see some of our carbon dating on the upper left there about the date range that we found for these, mostly from the Lombard period. We found a few items on them. You can see this ring that we found on one of the skeletons there. And we find them buried in a number of different ways, sometimes disturbed, as though people were going back and going into them in later periods trying to find treasure, essentially. So that's also been kind of interesting. Here's some other burials that we found of children, especially we have an interesting one of a child that was buried in an amphora in a storage vessel. You can see right there. Other things that you learn on the site is while we're doing our excavating and conserving our mosaics and studying our material osteologically, we're also collecting bioarchaeological samples. And here are people you can see engaged in one of the primary ways we have of sampling our soil, which is through flotation. So we essentially wash our dirt, come up that from an archaeological context, and we find objects in them that tell us something about the site. And many of them have yielded things that we would expect, sort of olive pits, evidence of grapes, grains, fruits, nuts. But one interesting spot in the house yielded a bunch of pieces of shellfish. And that's kind of fascinating, given that we're kind of in the middle of central Italy. It means that the rich people who presumably owned the villa probably had, a seafood meal brought up to them out into up into the mountains where they had their villa. So that was a pleasant surprise, but just one of the many things that we find doing our biological sampling that we do. So here's a shot of the group from a previous year. You can see there with a nice background. Here's some images of where we actually live. This is the hotel that's nearby the site where we both live and have all our meals. You can see here the dining room in the bottom corner, and then what some of the bedrooms look like. We have rooms, and students are assigned about 2 to 4 to a room. Each one of those rooms has its own bathroom, which is, nice. And it's just a lovely little hotel that's actually a working farm. So you can see it's kind of in the middle of an olive grove, and there's animals around and stuff. And it's just very quaint and pleasant to be there. So for your academic experience, you can see here sort of laid out for you. You'll work on site with a supervisor who will train you in excavation and recording techniques. Students can also work in the finds lab, or they can work on conservation of materials. Students are graded upon their participation in seminars, their site work, a site presentation, as well as a trench notebook that you make that becomes part of our site record. We also conduct seminars in the evenings on different topics. And you can see what some of the topics have been in the past: Roman villas, stratigraphy, mosaics, wall plaster, conservation, osteology, and we've had a couple others in the past. Now the brass tacks about how much this costs. So we've yet to determine our costs yet for 2022 exactly. But right now, our estimated cost for our undergraduate program for an NJ resident should be about $4,500 and about $5,000 for a non-New Jersey resident. Grad students can also participate. They can participate for 6 credits for being at the site all 5 weeks for about $4,800. These are, again, estimated numbers. Or for about 2 weeks for 3 credits for about $2,800. So this cost includes the credits, the weekday room and board, and your travel within Italy for the program. So it doesn't cover your flight to Italy or things that you might spend on the weekends when you're traveling on your own. Okay, and I can give you a sense about how much that might cost if you want to reach out to me. We have an application that is due on March 1st, but that almost always gets extended until at least mid-March. So you should think about March 1st as the hard deadline, but no, if you've already started an application, we'll probably keep the system open and probably for another few weeks after that. There is some financial aid available, which you can see on our website, and I can also help you, come up with some options if you're interested in that. Our application system is open right now, and we more or less accept students on a rolling basis. So once you get it completed, I can let you know whether you've been accepted or not. And again, for questions, you can ask me at my email there. That's really what I've got. I was thinking one way we could do this is to answer questions for each program. So if anybody has any questions about this one specifically, you can also ask it after Professor Murphy's presented on his project. But if there's any questions, I'll look in the chat here and see if anybody has any, or if you'd like to raise your hand, I can take it. I'll stop sharing the screen, by the way. Okay, I think we're good. So if anybody has any questions, like I said, after Professor Murphy's presented, I can take your questions, or you can send me something on email if you'd rather do it that way. So Brian, I'm gonna take your you're muted.
Is that working now? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Hey, everybody. My name is Brian Murphy. I'm a associate professor of history here. And what I want to talk to you about today, and hope you're interested in, is a embedded study abroad program that we're starting in March of 2022. So this is an embedded history study abroad program. So what that means is you take a class with me in the spring, like a normal history class for 3 credits, and then during spring break, which is going to be March 13th to March 19th, that week when people sometimes go away and sometimes don't, we'll go to Oxford, fly to London to Heathrow Airport, take a bus from London up to the lovely town of Oxford, and then spend a week talking about similar things that we're already doing in the class. So what the class is part of a broader project here at Rutgers Newark that I'm working on about the U.S. Constitution, teaching, like, sort of studying the U.S. Constitution and asking big questions about whether or not the system that we live in, of having a federal republic with a U.S. Constitution governing a national government and then 50 state constitutions running all the various states, and the interactions between those 2 layers of government, asking whether or not that system is capable of addressing climate change, which, if you just follow the news, is a ripe issue right now about whether or not the government is actually going to ever be able to muster the ability to deal with this in some kind of meaningful way before we're all doomed. But the class will address these issues and work on a project. So there have been 27 amendments to the Constitution, and Jersey is interesting because it's had three different state constitutions since it became a state in 1776. One of the things that we're trying to do with Quill here is this project based in Oxford, which would be the reason we'd be going there, right, in the middle of this class on the Constitution, is that part of the work that we're going to do in the class is around looking at the 1947 state constitution that still governs New Jersey today. It's got an interesting Rutgers connection because that constitution was actually drafted by a state constitutional convention, right? A bunch of people elected from around the state went to Rutgers, New Brunswick, to the gym down there, and met for a couple of months in the middle of 1947 to rewrite New Jersey's state constitution, because it had been, at that time, the oldest state constitution still in operation. It was drafted in 1844. So by the 1940s, there was just a lot in it that didn't really work anymore for a more modern state. So they rewrote it. They rewrote it at Rutgers. So it's got an interesting connection to the university and to the state. It's an interesting document to begin with because it's the first state constitution that's entirely rewritten after the Second World War. So it gives you, if anybody's interested in political science or the design of government, it gives you a real window into what was at the top of people's minds in that period right after the Second World War. And it's been amended a ton of times since. And there's a lot of environmental stuff in there that's really interesting. The word water appears in there more than the word voter does, for example. There's a whole lot of amendments that deal with environmental issues in New Jersey. So it's a good one to study. So the project at Quill is they break down literally bit by bit, like every single action that goes on in a constitutional convention, which is one of these meetings where a constitution is written by a bunch of people. So they have it's a digital platform that's based at Oxford, and we'll be meeting with the team there. We'll start on that work during the class when it's regular meeting during the semester. Then we'll go to Oxford, meet the team behind it, and have some classes with Professor Nicholas Cole, who's the historian who runs this project. He and I'll teach a bunch of seminars that week where we'll get, everybody will be able to be in the same room and dive into the stuff. We'll do that in the mornings, and then we'll have the afternoon free to go see sites in and around Oxford, which is a beautiful town. These are the grounds of Pembroke College. It's really it's a spectacular place to go visit. It's very nice in March, actually. It's more mild than here. I'm sorry about the quality of this photo. This is what I had to grab. This is one of the bedrooms at where the dorms in Pembroke College where you'd be staying. This is the beautiful cafeteria in Pembroke College where we'll be taking our meals. And while we're there, we'll go to the Ashmolean Museum, which is a museum of it's got a lot of really good fossils, and it's an art and natural history museum right in the middle of town. And then we'll go to the Bodleian Library, see the sites of Oxford's a lovely place to go visit and easy to visit. It's very manageable. Remember, you don't have to go learn another language to go visit there. The food is perfectly fine. It's an easy flight over there. This would be, if you have not been out of the country before, and even if you have, but if you haven't, this is a really easy way to kind of do that, right? You'll be there with a bunch of other students. You'll speak the same language. It's a very safe town to go visit. You can't really get lost there, and it'll be a relatively small group of us. We'll also go visit. There's a manor house about 35 miles out of town that we'll go visit one day. This is called Selgrave Manor. It's actually the ancestral home of George Washington's family. It's right there. It's worth a visit, and they'd be happy to have some American students come visit. So the way this will work is we have a class running in the spring. When you register for that class, you'll also be registering for the 1 credit study abroad add-on that represents this week in Oxford. The cost is, we haven't finalized the budget yet. It's going to be in the ballpark of $3,500. That is everything but the flight. So you'll get to stay in Oxford. We've made this as affordable, I think, as it can possibly get. So this will be inclusive of you staying at Pembroke College and eating all of your meals at Pembroke College, breakfast, lunch, and dinner at their cafeteria, which is really excellent. And then one night we'll do a dinner out at a real English pub, which there are many in Oxford. But so basically, and this also includes some walking around, spare money. So this will be inclusive of pretty much of everything that you could possibly need there, except flying there. And flying there in March, flying to London in March is not going to be a terribly expensive flight. So the nice thing about this, and one of the reasons I'm excited to do an embedded study abroad class here, is because you can, the cost of if you're on financial aid, the cost of the trip, the cost of the 1 credit add-on is rolled into your tuition for the semester. So it'll roll into your financial aid. It can roll into your combination of financial aid and loans, or however you're funding, but it's a part of it. So it's not like a special separate add-on that won't be covered by anything else. And again, like Professor Farney said, if money is going to be the obstacle here, let me know and we can find a way to work. I'll do everything I can to try to find a way to make this work for you. But this is a nice, affordable way to get to Oxford, and really get to do some interesting. I'm really excited about this project. It's so hard to find sometimes it's really hard to find a good digital humanities project in history. And that has a really serious research component to it. But the beauty of this is, you'll be taking a class on the Constitution. We'll be talking about this cool stuff, but you'll also be working on this research project. And when it's done, it's going to take a couple semesters to get done. But as we put all this material in, it'll become a really useful tool, not only for historians and researchers, but it's been where this has been done before. And Quill has done this in 2 states now. Those cases, the stuff that they put online is now getting cited in state Supreme Court decisions as a resource, because if, when people go to try to interpret a state constitution, they can now go look at what was discussed at the state constitutional convention, which gives you a good window into what the intent was and what the context is for the sometimes vague language that we find in these documents. So it's a really useful tool for getting at that and looking at how these instruments are negotiated and created. So you're not only going to be looking at, reading stuff about how the Constitution is written, we're actually diving into that process in kind of a real-time way. If there are any questions that you have, my email is bm628@rutgers.edu. And you can find the application now through the link that Christina posted, and it can start writing you through that. I think the deadline is December. The deadline to apply is December 15th. Okay. All right. Gary and I can both take any questions. Thanks,
I have a
Christina.
question that came through from one of our students earlier today.
Okay.
How would it work for graduate students that are interested in taking the embedded experience? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't know quite yet, but I want to get it. I'd like to cross-list it. I emailed Tim about this. So once I figure out how I can cross-list this, I think we should have a way to enroll a graduate student. And this is something I actually Gary got on me to start looking into as soon as we work. So I'd like to be able to have a couple grad students in there. And the way that we would do that is we'd have to cross-list it with a grad number. And then once we do that, we should be good to go.
Well, graduate students can take undergraduate courses that are 300 level and above, and which yours will be, because it'll be underpaid.
Oh, they can.
They can.
So we don't even need to worry about that.
Yeah, they would need to do some additional work. Yes, because you can talk a little bit about, would the expectation be an additional paper or?
Okay, so probably one of the final projects that we have as a final project, it is sort of in lieu of a paper for this class, is a batch of work on Quill, right? And the set of findings about what you've done. For a graduate student, I think we'd offer the option to turn that into a seminar paper of some kind on constitution making. You'll have a bunch of people at your disposal to talk through these ideas with, and we can find a way to make it either an original research paper or a broader historiographical look at the literature around constitutions, which has been really dynamic lately. There's some really phenomenal work coming out, and we're reading it in the class, actually, reading some great stuff. So we can work it that way.
Thank you.
I think the other thing is the credit that they would get the extra one, and that might have to go through global with the new number, because that way, right. Yeah,
we might have to do it that way.
You've got one question in the chat from a student. Would the flight to London be separate or together with the class?
It would be, I think, if you mean like, would we all take the same flight together? We don't have to. We could, though Rutgers doesn't, you book your own travel. So I can tell you the easiest way to do this would be just tell you when to meet me at Heathrow Airport, and whatever plane you want to take to get there, or a ship, or whatever your plan is. Just we'll meet there and then take the tube into London, and then there's a bus at Paddington Station that we can catch. It's like an hour and change to Oxford. It's a really short ride.
Yeah.
Flights are, and yeah,
Okay.
and I should just say flights from March right now are like between $400 and $600. So it's a cheap time to go. And remember they left, they're eager to have, people are eager to have Americans come because they've done a tremendous self-inflicted wound to their economy. So they frankly need tourists.
Yeah, and like you said, Oxford is just a great town. There's so much
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
I'll say from an ancient point of view, like Ashmolean has some awesome Greek and Roman stuff. So
Oh, they do. Yeah, we should stop there for other stuff. Yeah. No, it's a great town. It's like it's just they filmed Harry Potter there. So it's like
yeah, that's right. The hall there, you can go in.
The play you can go see
Yeah.
it looks exactly, it looks like that too. It's it's a little bit, it's like going to Disney or something. Like it's beautiful. Doesn't even feel real.
Yeah, and I mean, if students have any questions at all, just ask us, and we're happy to. And for like the Italy trip too, I'm organizing basically my flight the same way. It's like I'm going to tell you when to be in Rome's Fiumicino Airport, what day, and then what time we'll meet as a group, and then go out together to the archaeological site. And then we also help you negotiate the way back to the airport at the end. I don't know about your program, Brian, but for ours, we encourage students to do a little traveling on their own before or after the program, so that they can see other things.
Yeah, it would be very easy to for this. It would be if you wanted to get to London a day or two earlier, stay a day or two after. It's easy to do because we're pretty close by, and again, it's an easy, safe town to visit. So it's not like it's a good way to get a look around a place you've never been to before,
and get over your jet lag if you did it beforehand.
That's right.
Before you meet with the group.
Just go for a huge walk the day beforehand.
Yeah. It's students with Italy, I always say, either if you go ahead of time, you can get over your jet lag. If you stay late, then you will have met people. Maybe you can travel with them, and you'll know, maybe a bit more what you're doing for getting around. But yeah, both Oxford and Rome really are easy towns to get around.
And so the official dates we have are the Sunday to the Saturday. So there's actually a day. There are days built in on either side. If you want to get there a little earlier, stay a little late.
And as a preview to students, so we'll give another one of these next semester. Both I'll do a repeat one for the Archaeological Field School, but just as a little preview, we're going to have the department's also operating a study abroad program to Sicily and Malta that both of us are involved in, as well as Professor Green Mercado. So we'll be talking more about that in the springtime. Just I wanted to get that in because I kind of forgot to mention it in the very beginning. But, okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Again, if you have any questions or something, just reach out to us individually or collectively, and we're happy to do it. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at all, or talk more about the class. I have a syllabus finished. We're ready to hit the road here. Okay.
There's my applause button. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
One quick note to anyone that came in a little bit later, because I know we've had some visitors in and out. There will be a recording made available. The full presentation will be on our website, history.norc.rutgers.edu. And the Mediterranean Displacements Project, I don't know if you want to plug that also in the chat. Please follow us on social media at Federated History. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everybody.